Spreadsheets are fun.
Yeah, we've switched it up today, huh? So we can get completely crazy with this. Do we have any presentations on here? Or?
No, they're here in person. I don't know if there'll be presentations on Zoom, probably Marla.
Yes. I'm in Ohio.
It would appear that it's 6 o'clock, and because we have a looming bedtime for Tim, we should go ahead and get started. And so at 6 o'clock, we will call this special, this is a work session of City Council, and we have made all of these work sessions special meetings. So if we feel the need to make decisions, we are able to do that. Although, you know, it's not, we won't necessarily be making any decisions today. Roll call, please.
Mayor Bobby.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Green. Here. Councilmember Tharp.
Here.
Councilmember Hill.
Present.
Councilmember Gowing.
Here.
Councilmember Forgensi.
Present.
Councilmember Livingston is absent.
Great, thank you very much. Is there anything on this agenda, you know, that anybody would like to add, delete, or change? Since it's a work session, we do not need a motion. We can move on. Are there any housekeeping matters? Anything anybody would like to bring up before we get into the? Yes, Diane.
We are streaming live to YouTube. This is
Okay.
our test run.
Excellent.
All of that. Okay.
So no edits, no do-overs.
There's the magic of editing maybe later on. Okay, are there anybody in the public who would like to speak on any issues that are not on this agenda? If you would, please come up and speak to City Council. You'll have 3 minutes.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, Luke Finken, 408 West 7th Street. Thank you again for your service here to the city of Leadville. Just a quick housekeeping. You will be allowing for public comment on each one of the presentations. Is this correct? Or is now the time to give you input on each of the presentations?
No, this is not a, you know, a public comment meeting. These presentations are simply presentations to City Council regarding budgetary issues.
Okay, so let me first off by saying thank you so much again for your continued support of the Irish Miners Memorial. Had a great turnout. Thank you so much for everything you continue to do for that. Really appreciate it. Our parades that we recently had with the practice parade and also the homecoming parade. Unfortunately, our temporary delay was not followed. We did have oncoming traffic, which I did hear from a parent. Granted, it was only one parent who felt that definitely during the homecoming parade, oncoming traffic with little ones, as we did have a very nice turnout from our LCES, formerly known as West Park. So I'm hoping that with proper staffing, I also did call up the county to make sure that they knew what was happening, which was good because we did have some people show up from the sheriff's office to help us with that parade. I'm just going to say it real fast. I think that the Tabor Opera House using the signage of "It ain't over till the fat lady sings" is wrong. It continues to be the woman who is singing, and so therefore it is over. Ben Dawes is a fabulous artist, and I believe that he got that messaging as well. I would ask the Tabor Opera House to stop using that messaging. Also, I highly encourage you to vote no on the LCEDC, 40 grand. This money is subsidized. It should not be subsidized by taxpayers. The city taxpayers are already paying in their county taxes. Should not be giving up 40 grand to this. This money should go back into your employees as soon as possible. Please consider in-kind donations to the LLC, EDC, but please say no to that 40K. Invest in your employees and your elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brickman. Anybody else in the public who would like to speak on items not on the agenda? Okay, thank you very much.
Did Luke leave?
Yeah.
What was his point about the parade?
Oh, the
Well,
song that you had.
It's all the conversations we've already had, and I went to the chief the next day after city council and explained to him that we just have to do a better job of
Okay.
closing both lanes on those temporary
And he was
closures.
identifying the same,
Same issue,
Okay.
because a parent had, or
yeah,
an
Yeah.
adult, another
Yeah.
adult.
Yeah.
at The homecoming parade. had
okay,
brought
which we
his
discussed
attention.
last meeting.
Right,
Thank you for following up on that, Mayor.
you bet. Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll go forward with presentations. I do want to let you know that one of the presentations is going to be by Noah Sawson, but he said he didn't think he could be here until 7:40. And I said, we'll probably be past presentations by then, but we'll stay flexible. And if he can be here then, and if we're still awake at that time, that he can present to us at that time.
When's your bedtime, Tim?
8:30.
Okay.
Sharp.
Okay.
Oh, God. At this time, we would love to hear from the Tabor Opera House and a presentation regarding their budget request.
Good evening, and thank you. Bobby, esteemed City Council. It's a little bit different type of presentation, which is podium and everything. It's kind of different from what I've been used to. My name's Carl Schaefer, and I do represent the Tabor Opera House Preservation Foundation. And we are here tonight to make our budget request on behalf of that foundation to our partners who are the city of Leadville, who owns the Tabor Opera House. I'm going to read from my notes as it's just a bit easier for me. I serve for you as a city council representative along with Amy Tate, who is also in the audience, and on Zoom, our president, Jenny Buddenberg. She's here with us tonight. We are members of the nonprofit organization and all volunteer board of directors that leads the daily operations and the $15 million rehabilitation of the Tabor Opera House. I'm also a Leadville native, and I have a very strong, passionate desire to see the Opera House renovated, and I'm also part of the arts in Lake County, and using the Opera House to bring entertainment to our community means a lot to me. Hopefully that you recently wandered by the Tabor Opera House to see the renovation as it's taking place. Once the scaffolding come down, I think everybody was amazed at what the Opera House used to look like. And it's very impressive. I think it marks a milestone for our progress in the renovation progress. Tonight, we ask City Council to continue supporting our collective vision to revitalize the Tabor by making a very strong funding commitment. We are asking for $100,000 to be budgeted and allocated for 3 consecutive years for a total of a $300,000 commitment. Funding of $100,000 every year between 2022 and 2024 will provide reliable, consistent revenue to operate the Tabor Opera House and also to accelerate the fundraising and implementation of the building rehabilitation. And it will also advance projects like the historic state scenery inventory and conservation. Now, until such time that more interior spaces can be utilized in the Tabor to produce earned income, the foundation must rely on other sources to cover our annual operating costs, primarily through individual donor fundraising. Now, this is very challenging for us when we're simultaneously fundraising and implementing a $50 million building rehabilitation. In addition, performances do not provide income. The foundation has found that generally we break even on each event. And in 2019, our budget was actually in the red. Fortunately, despite the difficulties of COVID-19 in 2020 and again this year, we were able to correct our course and put ourselves in a healthier financial track through federal, state relief, and individual donor support. Over the next 3 years, we anticipate having raised a good portion of the $15 million through our capital campaign and begin the rehabilitation of the building's interior. The level of commitments that you make and that we request will support us in numerous ways. Wages and salaries for paid leadership and professional consultants, and using live performances on the Tabor Opera House stage, which will include the cost of the performers and the general operations to carry out those performances. In the nearly 5 years that the foundation in the city of Leadville has entered into this public-private partnership for the benefit of our community, the city has allocated $120,000 to the Tabor for operation, plus another roughly $32,000 for building repairs, for a total of $152,000. Now, I think what's really important is that $152,000 has been leveraged with an amazing $2.7 million of earned income, individual donations, grant awards, in addition to that, the tens of thousands of dollars that have been provided through in-kind gifts like volunteer hours and sponsorships. This type of public-private partnership between the foundation and the city of Leadville is critical to support our local arts programs, as it does worldwide. Investment in our community and its well-being and its economic vitality. Our hard work and success are being recognized. By our hard work and success, that's your hard work and success. Recently, we were notified that our partnership will receive the 2022 Endangered Places Program Progress Award from the Colorado Preservation Inc. and will be noted at their annual Dana Crawford Awards. And all this for progress that's been made on the Tabor Opera House project. We're incredibly excited for the opportunity to take the next steps in growing the foundation and revitalizing the Opera House. And it's our commitment, not only to our community, but to you, that we will continue to work hard, and with you continuing to work hard with us and help us financially, we will make the Tabor Opera House renovation a reality and not just a dream. So we thank you again, and we will take any questions if you would like. Also, if there's members in the public that would like to see our financial statements and our annual report, Amy has some copies. I know the city has been provided those as well. So if you have any questions at this time, we will try to field all of them with good answers.
Thanks for your report. I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
And thanks for putting together this presentation. And congratulations on the beauty of the new facade. It's awesome. So the fact that the city owns the Tabor Opera House, are there already expenses that are built into our budget that support it, that this $100,000 annually would be on top of? Or would this be our total contribution towards the Tabor for the year? Do you see what I'm getting at?
I think so. I don't believe that there's ever been any built-in contributions from the city to the Tabor. We generally come to you on a yearly basis and make a request regarding our needs and our wishes for the coming year.
The answer is, I believe that the $100,000 would supplant the $50,000 that we granted last year. So it'd be an additional $50,000. And then CTF funds we consider separately from that.
What is CTF?
CTF is a separate bucket, a budget here that's used for parks and recreation and museums upkeep. And
Okay.
so we can apply some of that money to the Tabor Opera House. At one time, the city and county each committed $25,000 in CTF. We're going back about 4 years, about $25,000 each in CTF. Since then, those numbers have been much less. But then we have the Tabor Opera House will bill us for, say, maintenance costs that could be covered under CTF. Do we know what that number was last year?
I do not for
Okay.
last year.
All right.
It was $5,000.
Figured I'd give them for
For the
5
total
years.
of the 5 years. For some reason, I think it was in the neighborhood of $6,000 last year. but I don't have those numbers in front of me.
I was thinking, I thought it was around 5,000
Okay.
if they went over.
Okay,
Because that's typically, I think, what we have done in the past
Mhm.
few years.
well, and I think that's correct. So just to answer your question,
About
the $100,000 would supplant the $50,000, and CTF is a separate consideration.
I have a question.
Yes.
And there's a hand raised there
Yeah,
too.
Jenny.
In,
Okay.
in the under the financials in the report, under revenue, it says city of Leadville, $21,150.
I don't have the phone, Jim.
And I was under the impression that we did make a $50,000 contribution
I can
last
clarify
year,
that.
so I'm
This
not
is the
sure.
2020 report. And so the 50,000 was the 2021.
Oh, gotcha.
I think Jenny, our board president, would like to speak possibly to the last question as well. So if you could.
Can you guys hear me?
Jenny, go ahead.
I just wanted to confirm, last year CTF was $5,000.
Are you muted?
No? Jamie says he can hear me. I can drop it in the chat.
Jenny, can you try to talk to me again?
Yes, can you hear me? No.
Do we have any idea you cannot hear her?
It's a setting that I didn't know about. Jenny, can you try talking again? I just changed the
Yeah.
speakers.
All right, all right.
Sorry about that. I wanted to quickly confirm that CTF in 2021, what you guys had allocated to us during your budget session last year was $5,000 total on top of the 50,000.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Amy, did you have something to
No,
add?
I just thought I'd stand here.
Oh, thank you. Good. What are the questions we have? I have one. You've asked for $100,000. I'd like to know in a little more depth what that's going to cover, and if you talk about wages and salaries, is that one person? Is it more than one person? And how do you think you will deal with benefits?
Okay, well, specifically, we hope to increase, the reason we haven't spent $50,000 that you allocated to us last year, although we really tried. We've added dozens of applicants for our executive director position, and the committee that actually spirited it, that look for, vetted numbers of people, interviewed numbers of people, came down to what we thought was one good candidate, and then that didn't end up working out as well. And so in order to broaden our reach for a good executive director, we do feel that we're going to have to add a little bit more to the pot of that. So certainly some of this $100,000 will go to a larger salary for that. And we do hope that we can draw on a greater pool of executive director candidates. Now, the benefits, I think Jenny can speak to a little bit more, but we do not intend to have just one individual. We need to seek out professional help in certain aspects of this renovation progress. We have a very diverse board of directors. However, we are all people and individuals and volunteers who spend as much time as we can at this. But I do feel, and we feel, that we need expertise in some of these matters to help move things along, especially with fundraising for the capital campaign or work with the Historic Scenery Project and other things. So we do anticipate having monies to hire other professional individuals that will assist us in getting this project done. Jenny, would you like to speak to that as well?
Sure. Thanks, Carl. So Carl's right. We found through a pretty extensive search that the salary we were offering wasn't quite enough to get the experience that we need in the position. So we do need to find additional funds to bring that salary up to a competitive level. And then also, we would like to reopen the stage next year, which I'm sure everybody would like to see. It's been quiet for 2 years, and to be able to do that, we do need some assistance there as well. As Carl had mentioned in his presentation, our performances generally break even. Sometimes we lose money on them. And so in order to not find ourselves in a position like we were in 2019 when we were in the red with our budget, we would like to have those performances covered up front. So this $100,000 would in part go towards covering each of the 4 performances that we would like to put onto the stage. And to get those on the stage, we also need some assistance in terms of, finding the performers, working on contracts, actually implementing the performances themselves. And this $100,000 would go towards that as well to assist. And then the general operations that go along with performances to all the behind the scenes, the utilities, all of those costs that go into it. So those are the primary expenses that we would be putting towards this $100,000.
Thank you, Jenny.
Mhm.
Any other questions for the Tabor Opera House Board? I don't think I got an answer to the benefits question.
Benefits question. Are you speaking with regards to benefits for the individuals that we're hiring?
Right.
You wanna take a
I think
stab?
that's something that we're still discussing, and I think it very much depends on what our funding looks like.
Okay.
So I think that's something we've talked, during this process, we talked extensively about what we could offer versus,
Right.
What will be able to offer?
And is that something that, should they want and think they can financially afford to provide benefits, would that individual, would it be a possibility that they would come through the city? Or is that an option, or the county even?
I think it's been discussed, and that's why I brought it up, because I think that's an option that was bandied about, and I don't know, I don't know what the answer would be, but that might be the easiest way. And it would have to be the city. It's a city property. I think it's going to have to be a city.
And in essence, in a roundabout way, a city employee, so.
So, yeah, that's, anyway, that's hence the question, because I didn't know which direction you guys were thinking of going with that.
I could supplement that a little bit more, Greg. You're right in that we had talked about maybe some type of partnership on benefits with the city, if that's feasible to explore that option. We do have an HR manual that outlines all the benefits that we provide to our employees, whether they're seasonal, part-time, or full-time. We actually just completed that a couple months ago. So we are able to offer for our part-time and full-time employees a discretionary bonus that does help cover the cost of medical insurance and retirement savings. And then we also have, vacation time, sick time, all of those more traditional benefits as well that we can offer to our employees.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions for the Tabor Opera House Board?
How does that partnership work? Who is in charge of operations and programming?
Okay, so because this has been in place for about 5 years and you weren't a party to it when it began, maybe we can just reiterate how this all came about. The city of Leadville was able to purchase the Opera House almost 5 years ago. And then in the meantime, and for many years prior to that, the Tabor Opera House Preservation Foundation was already an established 501c3 organization. The partnership that was developed was due to the fact that the foundation basically has a lease on the building with the city for the sole and express purpose of renovating and operating the building. And so that's how the partnership is kind of, in a nutshell, how it works.
Okay.
And just so you're aware too, typically in art venues, you have the foundation is paid like a management fee from the owners of the building. And please clarify, Jenny, if you could, but this is what was explained to me. So the foundation doesn't get any kind of management fee from the city, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and I think in typical venues, there is a management fee that comes with that. That lease, but it was not negotiated in the lease that the city, in fact, signed with the foundation.
Yeah, and the thing of it is, it's both the city's goal and it's the foundation goal to revitalize this building and make it a real cornerstone of Harrison Avenue. And the economic impact that a fully vitalized Tabor Opera House would be enormous for this community. And so that's why those of us that are truly involved are working so hard to make this happen. It's a monumental task. Raising $15 million is no easy stretch by any means. And if you can help us by, helping us get some of the professional help that would really push this along, it would, we would like to make this happen, in 3 or 4 years, not 13 or 14 years. So that's why we're pushing so hard. I would love to live long enough to see this happen.
Wouldn't that be nice? I would tell you, and I think the rest of the council probably needs to hear it as well. I've been actually telling the foundation for about 3 years now that they really needed to focus on renovation, but they haven't been able to do that as a board because there's just too many moving parts. That's why they desperately need this executive director, and they probably need an ancillary person that focuses on events, because events just, suck the life out of the foundation. We've seen it. It just burns everybody to the ground, especially when they were doing 15 events in a year, and it was untenable. So I'll leave it at that, but that's part of what is important to me, at least. Any other thoughts before we move on?
I do have one more question. Is the intent of the executive director also to help you with the campaign fundraising, to push forward towards that $15 million goal for the renovation itself?
That position is pretty all encompassing right now. Certainly, they would play an integral part in assisting the board with that.
Okay.
But we've also received a grant to come up with a capital feasibility study and capital campaign feasibility study, so that we could also hire a professional to sort of take on some of that fundraising part of it as well. And so, we realized also going through this that maybe the ED is not, can't handle that as well. And so there are professionals out there that do that sort of thing. And if we have a fundraising plan in place for them, of which we have a grant for, we're not asking for funding for that, then, we can set them up for success and free up the ED to do more of the operational and networking things that we need them to do.
Makes sense. Thank
Okay.
you.
Is that, Jenny, I saw you're off mute. Is that?
No, I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah. I mean, any executive director is always going to have a big role in fundraising, and the $15 million campaign is the biggest campaign that the foundation has. So certainly they're going to be tied very closely to the implementation of that. But as Amy said, she's right. We just received enough funding now to be able to hire a fundraising consultant or team to develop a capital campaign feasibility study for us that'll provide a blueprint to raising that full $15 million so we can do the entire rehabilitation. And we are actually going to put that RFP out early next year and get that rolling. So that'll happen here soon.
Thank you, Jenny. And thank you to the board. We're going to have to move on in order to get everything in tonight, but thank you so much.
Thank you for your consideration.
Well, and anybody that missed the open house we had the other night, if you'd like to come at another time, we're more than happy to host you. So
You bet.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, next up, we have the Leadville Lake County Economic Development Corporation. Marla.
Yes, thanks. Sorry, I'm not there in person. I had to make a whirlwind trip to Ohio to visit my mother. She's fine, but just needed to put my eyes on her with some health issues that she's encountering, and she is in the nursing home. Before I start on the EDC, I am going to put in the chat box the Historic Masonic Theater in Clifton Forge, Virginia, which is a facilities that is a mirror image of the Tabor Opera House. And Clifton Forge has a population of about 5,000 people. And I won't tell you what their renovation costs were, but it was a lot higher than the Tabor. But the economic impact of that, even through COVID, they made a profit, which was pretty amazing for a theater of that size. So council, mayor, I applaud you guys for this project, and I applaud the Tabor board because you will see the fruits of the labor in due time. The Masonic Theater has been up and running, and Councilmember Gowan has heard me talk about this a lot, but that facilities has brought in some really good showstoppers. But I think the real thing that has happened, it's been a game changer for the youth in that community, and they have risen to the arts and understand it at a different level. On the EDC, we made this a real short highlights bullets. Our real comprehensive year-end report will be finalized in December, so you'll see the fancy stuff. Our official budget at this point has not been approved by our board. We have worked through the budget and we'll have it approved on October 21st. The executive committee and the staff, we've worked through it. My 14 months in Leadville, Lake County, has been a whirlwind, even through the pandemic. You all know the developments that are occurring. The things that I think I want to stand out or emphasize that is happening is the investors that are coming to town. We're meeting on a monthly basis. And I didn't even get this on here because this just happened today. Typically, brownfields grants cannot be used that much for residential, but the federal government and the state is lifting that, is typically for commercial development. So we're in the process of writing a brownfields grant that we can allocate for phase 1's phase 2 remediation. I'm super excited about that, and I just found that out today. But on the project side, I will say the one thing that has really helped us is our sales tax revenue numbers and breaking it down between remote sales. And that's another work session, but remote sales and then also bricks and mortar to speak. And it has assisted us with some recruiting processes, but it's also assisted validation for the hotel that'll go in the rail yard. They wanted to come. They knew it was an important project for them, but seeing those numbers kind of took it to the next phase. And the validation too, that we're not seeing a shoulder seasons. They're shrinking. And you all know that from seeing your numbers that are coming into the city. The thing that has worked for us too on our efforts is really having a business and retention support for our existing businesses. Between Nancy and myself, we conquer and divide is what we say. So she stays on Harrison Avenue and takes care of those businesses, and I do the outlying areas and in the county. And we all know, and I got to Ohio with just the prayer of Southwest with all their issues, but the workforce issue has bubbled to the top, and helping CMC now with a construction trade program. And they already have some students that want to get in the pipeline. So I'm excited about that because, you know, we need those construction trades in Leadville, Lake County, in Chaffey County, and Summit County. The ask, as you can see there, and I put the history sort of for you so you can see, we need a part-time admin in the office. So that does our administrative support work. So we're out on the streets more, we're visiting with our businesses, we're finding out the issues and writing grants. I can tell you today, I went and saw mom I'm allowed to go to the nursing home for about 2 hours and mask, goggles, the whole bit. And I came back to my brother's place and put my head down and I started on this brownfields grant. And I'm like, man, I do better here because it's quiet without interruptions. But we're in the process of the brownfields grant. We have submitted a grant for restructuring and assistance with OEdit for our organization to do a market study and additional analysis for the right businesses to recruit. And Dola, Chrissy Dune's amazing, and I are working on a middle mile grant for some of the broadband. And believe it or not, we did a beta test with this, and there are some locations in the city limits that doesn't have the speeds that we should have accurately, that you're paying for. So you're paying for speeds up and down, and that's not what you're receiving. So that is in the process too. So this additional funds will help us get that admin. It will help us work on a real comprehensive marketing plan that we can use in the state of Colorado, but also the United States and globally, because we've been discovered, as you all know. And one of the things that we really want to put together is remote workers. And then some training, not just for staff, but for folks like you, for our volunteer base. So questions?
Any questions from city council?
Well,
I hate I'm not there.
a lot of my questions, because this both LLEDC and Main Street have asked for an 80% increase in funds to them. And although in this bullet list, there are some things that I could gather that may be what those funds might be focused on, I'm a little frustrated that we won't get any annual report or budget report before being asked to consider this grant, because we're fiduciary of the city tax money. And I understand that in the history, at least I believe, a lot of the increased funding went to your salary.
That came from the county, the majority of it.
So I guess what I am asking for is a much more thorough presentation of your budget. How much are we contributing? What are your other funding sources? What's the percentage of that? How much money is going to
October 21st, we can submit that too.
Let's finish. And for future projects with this 80% increase, what will that breakdown be? Because right now I see a lot of bullet points, some of which are just that you attended some meetings. And I see you have 49 projects. I don't know what a project is. What is the outcome of those projects? What of all of this grant writing, have you received any grants? What are the outcomes that we can measure to say that the city's investment in the EDC is producing for the citizens of Leadville?
Yeah, Councilmember Green, let me break it down by the 49 projects are high altitude testing that we're recruiting. The hotel that's going to the rail yard, we have been in lockstep with Mr. Patel with research, getting him started with thinking about employees. We have another retail that's looking, and I'm staying in the city limits, okay? With projects right now. We didn't really help Shopco, but we are assisting them now, not with any grants, but with just trying to hire folks. One of our projects is Melanzana. They are having growing pains with staff and trying to hire between 5 to 8 people a quarter, and have assisted them with a state grant for training dollars. It hasn't been approved, but it's been supported at the state level with several meetings by Zoom. And if they do receive this funding, it'll be around $175,000 for about 6 months. And then they can reapply for some additional training dollars. Also on restaurants, we have a restaurant that is looking here on Harrison Avenue. And we have potential vacant facilities that's coming online that we're working with, and the antique store that is for sale. We've coordinated with 3 investors to look at that facilities and decide what they're going to do and buy it. Helping Dr. Yeagle with his land on Harrison Avenue and the Delaware. I've been in, I can't tell you how many meetings with that team to decide the outcome of that facilities, and then the hiring process, and also some additional investments that they want to make in the community.
I would like to see numbers rather than stories.
Yeah, we can put that down and I'll get it to you before the end of your budget. When we can share our full budget, we just haven't had it approved by our board yet.
Will that be approved next week? What are you meeting, Tim?
21st.
Oh, 21st. Okay, so next week. I would say a couple things that have impressed me this year about the EDC. Among the many things they do, I can't track a lot of it, but I would say the things that I have been involved in are, we did an initial funding for businesses, business relief at the very beginning of the pandemic. Subsequently, the EDC took on, I think, 3 funding cycles that were co-sponsored between the city and county financially, and the EDC ran those 3. Other thing is, we've been asking for years for the county to give us tax numbers. When they finally did that, what they gave us was 300 pages of codes, and so between the EDC and Councilmember Luritzen, they worked together to write an algorithm to take those 300 pages and condense them down to sectors of taxing, and that's been huge in terms of actually understanding where is our sales tax going, where is it coming from? Because we have no idea. We've been playing in the dark all this time, and the EDC took the lead on making that happen in terms of our ability to review that. So those are the 2 things that have been pretty big in 2021 in my mind.
I don't deny that the sales tax numbers, and we were all sort of waiting with bated breath for that. And I don't deny the use that we can make of those. I guess my feeling is that, the EDC is a private nonprofit. And if they are relying principally on the city and county to fund them, then I would like much more thorough presentation of what those funds are going to and what the measurable outcomes, in our case, for the city are. So if you're helping different businesses, what kind of outcomes are they having from that? Is Melanzana getting the grant? What, are we just paying for a bunch of meetings to happen? I can't gather enough from this single sheet of bullet points to make me feel comfortable agreeing to an 80% increase in funding. That's fine, and I'll stop.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from City Council for the EDC?
One comment I would like to make. It seems to me that for as long as I've been in town, it was always kind of a mishmash if somebody wanted to open a business here. And it's like, oh, well, you need to go see these people. Oh, well, you need to go see these people. There wasn't a central repository, for lack of a better word, to help somebody that has probably, that isn't familiar with the community, doesn't know the players, doesn't know, they don't know that Parkville Water is separate from the city. They don't know Leadville Sanitation separate from the city. And one thing that I have heard through different folks that I have talked to within the city of Leadville, I think they feel that one thing the EDC, and I think they appreciate most, is the fact that they go in and they don't have to be a member, and they will get assistance in how to step through a relocation or opening a new business. And so I mean, that in and of itself, I think has been really valuable to new business owners, folks, smaller businesses that have come in to Leadville. Because I've been at numerous board meetings and the EDC is there, you know, trying to assist these folks, which I think that is valuable. And that's where I see really the most input for like our business communities, especially those new businesses that aren't quite sure how to, you know, where they should go and who they should talk to. So that in my opinion has been very helpful with new businesses in town based on information I've received.
Marla, can you talk about a little bit the EDC's relationship with the chamber and the tourism panel and the visitor center?
Absolutely. We as in volunteers and paid staff, we try to meet at least every other month and share our marketing strategies, what we're doing, what new businesses are coming to town. If we hear the rumor that someone's closing, then we go into triage mode. And, you know, we talk to each other constantly. And Katie was in the office today. So a lot of times the visitors will come, and we've gotten some project leads for folks that are thinking about moving here or living in our area. So I don't use this word often, but we do collaborate really well together. And some organizations don't collaborate well, but we all collaborate and share our best resources and our strengths between each other. Thanks for the question. Yes.
Marla, thanks for the info and for the work you're doing. Is anything regarding childcare on your project list as a constraint to economic development?
Childcare and healthcare. Healthcare and then housing. Traditionally, economic developers don't dive into the housing or childcare, but we have to in Leadville and Lake County. So the answer is yes. I was just reviewing a document from OEDIT, and that's the state agency, for some grants that they're allocating through the American Rescue Funds for childcare. So I will share that with the coalition team for childcare and with Kayla. We have mentored and worked with a young lady that wants to open a childcare, but she needs funding. So, we're looking at some revolving loan funds and some additional funding and it'll be stacking money together and cobbling it together to get her to the finish line. But that is a project, Councilmember Green, that's one of those 49 projects. So we'll break those down. Some of our projects are confidential. So I have signed right now 7 NDAs. So we code name them. But, we can put the number of measurables and jobs out there. But yes, childcare is traditionally something that we don't do, but we have to right now because it's one of those crises, just like housing is.
Thank you.
I would say what we've heard is that as soon as the board agrees to your budget, which will be next Thursday, a week from
Correct.
From Thursday, that you'll be able to release that to City Council. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
That you will also supply us with some detail on some of these projects in terms of accomplishments and outcomes. Is that right?
Absolutely.
In what time frame can you do that?
We can have it to you the 22nd.
Okay. Well, if you get it to us, then I will distribute it to City Council for their consideration. Sorry, David.
Oh, I was gonna say, may I then also add to, since you intend to send over more information, some specifics for instance, the virtual job fair, You state that 11 people received jobs. I'd also like to know how many businesses participated, how many job applicant or how many job seekers participated. Do you consider this a success? What are you going to do it next year? How much funding would you anticipate that needing? The same thing for jobs training grant for local businesses. How many are participating? How many are receiving the grant money? It's just way too general. I'd like a lot more information on some of these bullets that, you know, it would tell me more about what your efforts are leading to.
Sure.
And then in terms of, you know, multiple training sessions, you know, I just want to point out, you know, a lot of those training sessions, which are supplied by SCORE or SBDC, are free or extremely low cost. So this looks good, but this is not something that the EDC needs to pour money into.
Okay. Any other questions for Marla? Thank you, Marla.
Thank you. Sorry I couldn't be there.
Next up, we have a presentation from Main Street. Nancy.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'll make this really quick. And thank you for your comments, Councilmember Green, on the outcomes. I think that's a really good point. I'm happy to do that too, on these Main Street highlights. I just want to say, since we took over the program in March, we have had, and I'm going to go off the cuff here, and not look at my notes because I get too nervous when I do that. We have had an amazing 6 months on Main Street. We really have, and we are really kind of seeing that momentum of the investment that the city has made in Main Street over the last 5 or 6 years. And we are, you know, we are moving full speed ahead. I think that in terms of, you know, with our increase that we're asking for here, it's really focused on our communication and engagement. I think that, and as well as some board development, because we did in the first 6 months identify through a DOLA consultant for our annual work plan, which did identify some need for board growth and board development. And let's see, what else did I, here I am looking at my notes. And also I want to add, just for the future and sustainability of the Main Street program, and it is so important. As you all know, I mean, this resource is really valuable to our incoming businesses and those that actually own businesses along Harrison, as they can access resources that communities without this program cannot. And I think that that's worth all the investment going forward as we are continuing to identify those projects. Anybody have any questions?
I do.
Can I jump in for a second? Since Nancy's taken over the Main Street program, you know, we've really had the opportunity for the CDOT grant for the bathroom, and that would have never happened. But I think the big thing that our historic buildings are on the radar of outside investors, and they see the value in them and are putting a lot of capital, as you all know, in a building that has a lot of repairs and work to do. And they have to have some serious deep pockets. And the Open for Business grant has been good for the Herald-Democrat, and we're anticipating some other funding, but just I'm anxious, and Councilmember Green, we're tracking some numbers with just the capital investment, and all of you, of the Delaware, the Antique Mall. I mean, the new ownership of these buildings. Windows alone, as you know, are extremely expensive, but they're doing some other significant repairs and really trying to get the facades back to where they could be. We have Larry Lucas from DOLA here, probably more than I ever anticipated, and he's the architect that you're all familiar with, and that's because of Nancy. You know, she's kind of a polite, cute, nice, smart lady that's a bulldog, And she's pretty tenacious when she wants to get after something for the historic area. And we wouldn't have I'm so proud to have her on staff and what's happened in the short period that Main Street's come under our organization. And it's the retaining of the jobs as difficult as it is right now. But it's been a banner record summer, I believe, as you all know.
Okay, thank you, Marla. Any questions for Nancy?
So here's my question, but I want to couch it in that I think, Main Street has had so many tangible successes, and I'm really pleased to see you guys diversify and expanding your fundraising through the Planter Box auction. I think that's a brilliant idea. Zates Park and the Open for Business grant, like all the work there has some very gratifying outcomes that we can see and measure. Last year, we wrapped Main Street, or we passed it back from the city into the EDC. So why is the Main Street funding request coming separate? Like, shouldn't that be wrapped into the EDC and that be part of the EDC's like Main Street budget? But why are we getting two separate increases?
That's actually a good question. Marla, can you answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. We, our budget is, we try to keep them separate, but then we have the Main Street allocated because this year we absorbed close to $6,000 office supplies, marketing materials for the Planter Box, everything that has happened, the EDC absorbed it. So we were trying to figure out the sustainability of Main Street in the future and just wanted to have it separated out, even though it is part of our organization, so we can see how the appropriated money is. The goal this coming year, as you can see, is to have its own website, have a marketing collateral piece, and with the assistance of DOLA, Nancy's taken it upon herself to get some additional board members, and they need training, and that's part of just trying to see how the money comes in and where the money goes out and separating the two organizations, even though they are one.
I would say this, Main Street is a state and national program. And I don't know that we would ever want to see it folded completely under the financial wing of the EDC, because otherwise with DOLA, runs the Main Street program in the state. And I think it should always be held separately. I can't imagine that it would be a good idea to combine them in terms of their budgets and how that would be perceived.
Yeah, I will add that the goal is, and we're talking, long-term goals, 5-10-year goals, is for the program, and I've talked to Greg about this in length, and our state partners, is for Main Street to be a standalone program. It's not unreasonable. It's not out of the question. Other mountain towns have that, and I want that for us. It's absolutely within our reach. What it will require, however, is some additional investment really to grow the board and to grow our communications and engagement. And that's really what the increase is going towards. In order for us to elevate to the next level in our accredited state program, it's going to require the board to grow by 6. And I am proud to say, in all my years working for a nonprofit, recruiting a board member a year is like this. But we did 2 in 6 months, and that's huge. That's a huge milestone. And we've done the same for the EDC as well. So if we continue with that momentum, we can get some additional funding to help us with these other essential and critical pieces. We could really grow that board a lot faster than our 5-year goal. We could cut that in half, and in 2.5 years, it could be a standalone program, and I wouldn't be in front of you all asking for additional money. And to Dana's point, we did bolster our Planter Box program so that it can be sustainable. The way it was now, it wasn't a sustainable program. It wasn't financially stable on its own. This auction will catapult that now and forever. We have a sustainable spring and summertime Leadville and Bloom. And those are the types of efforts and programs I want to be involved in, and push ahead for our Main Street program.
Excuse me, Mayor, John Wells would like to speak.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, John Wells, president of the LLC EDC. Part of the reason we keep them separate, the Main Street organization has its own board. And so we wanted to recognize that and not just make them a piece of the LLC EDC and just another line item budget. We thought that because they have their own board, their own management, that we're really just operating it on a pass-through basis for the city. So we thought it appropriate to keep that separate. So in the future, if it was ever determined that it needed to stand alone or go someplace else, it would be very easy to break out.
Thank you, John. Any other questions for Nancy? Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
At this time, we'll hear from Deputy Council regarding ski joint.
Evening, my name is Duffy Council, 601 West 7th Street, here to talk to you folks this evening on ski joring. Thanks for having me, Mayor, City Council, thanks for all you guys do. What do you think, should we bring it back? Funny how we kind of talked through the Tabor and economic development and our asset that is Main Street. I thought, well, these are all great segues to ski joring. I'm really proud to inform you all that there will be in the next few weeks, I think I go down the 27th to DIA has asked us, the curator there has asked us to do not one, but 2 display cases. We'll try to accentuate the old as well as how far it's come in 74 years from the main security terminal. If you're gonna walk to the A concourse, there's all those display cases on the side. Gonna highlight several winter iconic festivals, and ski joring certainly checked all those boxes. So cross your fingers, we've never made dioramas so big. And so I've had a lot of good help from the elders in the library and finding the old artifacts to put together. And we'll plan to come and talk with you guys in like January. You know, it certainly is our hope and our intent to secure our 3-year permit back again. Last year was the 3rd of our 3 years. The 2 years prior, we had 1 year. And I feel very confident we showed how adaptable we can be to continue on a tradition in this town, regardless of what it takes. And so along those lines, my purpose this evening is to ask, for those who don't know, we broadcast the event this last year. Came at a significant expenditure for a pretty little simple ski joring group, but thought that it was our best chance to try to continue to promote it and promote the businesses in town. And it turned out pretty cool, you know, definitely a first-year event. So lots of learning lessons and technological challenges and Facebook learning lessons. But we want to do it again. I think the commercials turned out great, especially the ones for things like Leadville and Lake County and Ski Cooper and the CMC. And so I've talked with Outward Bound already, hopefully talk to HMI, and thought, there's an idea. How do we accentuate the totally awesome nature of this community via this program, via commercials that we do? And I'm certainly learning it too. I've never been a TV productions guy, but it aired on the Altitude Network at 7 o'clock on September 3rd, Friday night at 7 p.m. The Saturday finals, September 10th, the following Friday, they did the Sunday finals. Had a bunch of folks at the Elks Lodge to watch it. I hope lots of folks in town got it on their TVs. That was pretty cool. And so we'd like to do it again this year. And so my point this evening is to request reimbursement from City Council. If you think that that's of value as well, it's not something I can guarantee we can continue to afford to do, but if you'll reimburse us the $6,000 that it cost us this last year to do it, then I'll promise that we'll do it again. That's about as short and sweet as I can make it.
That was short and sweet. Thank you very much.
Everything else is fun, but that's the purpose tonight.
Well,
Tim's got that.
I would ask, can we see that billing, you know,
Sure.
as part of our consideration?
Yeah.
easy enough ask?
We have nothing to hide, full
No, I
disclosure.
know, I just thought,
Yeah.
it'd be nice for us to have that in front of
Yep,
us.
yep. Yeah, and then,
So you're proposing this year to bring it back to Main Street, but to continue to broadcast it complete with Leadville specific commercials.
yeah, totally. And not just, like, they were all, nearly every dollar, every sponsor that we had for Leadville Ski Joring is local. They're like Piston Bully, hangs a banner and gives us a couple $100. They're an international company, but the norm is, this is an event put on by this community for this community. Huge level of pride in that. Not that we really say no, if that, I don't know, big Carhartt sponsor would come. Boy, that'd be cool. But yeah, we'd like to do it again this year on Main Street, the brand new Main Street that we didn't get to touch last year. I know it'll film better. And like all things I do with this will be my 6th year doing it, crawl, walk, run. Some of this is also dress rehearsal-esque, because this year is the 74th, meaning that in 2023, after that weekend, none of us are going to want to talk about ski joring ever again. It's going to be so big and fun and exhausting.
Has the city supported ski touring financially in the past at all?
Not per se by dollars, but certainly financially with the support of the street department and all sorts of resources. Same with county. We've
Yeah.
never solicited a dollar.
City and county are instrumental in getting the snow onto the avenue and then getting it off.
Yes.
As well as support, road closures,
Yeah.
detours,
Signage,
police.
traffic.
Yeah, getting any bad guys that are on the avenue that weekend,
Yeah.
ton of
I
support.
could imagine.
Just maybe not
Yeah.
financially to answer your question.
Mhm.
How many cameras do you anticipate would be used for this?
4, maybe 6.
Okay.
I think the most exciting thing that we'd be looking to do is procure somehow a boom truck and put one of them maybe off of like East 6 or somewhere safe enough that we certainly all deem acceptable. I visualize the rooftops are tough, it's too down. But a boom truck somewhere in the middle might give a good angle of most of the course, and then it's kind of shots. They're airing it still on the Altitude Network, like another 30 times between when they aired it at the beginning of the month and March. Granted, they're at some off times, Tim, you have to set your DVR, they're like 2, 3 in the morning. But we'll take it, right? This Altitude Network, exposure for Leadville, that was something that kind of blew me away, or I hadn't really planned on. I thought more of just fans and like watch parties, if we could do that, found during those times. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? This coming year will be your 74th? Is that what I heard?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
1949 was the first. But like Paul Copper always says, celebrate your first birthday after you're a year old. Your wedding anniversary after you've been married for a year, so 74th this year, next year 75th.
Okay.
Got any math issues with that seat, Paul Copper. And thanks for the consideration.
Anything else? Thank you, Duffy.
All right, yep, you bet. I'll get you that invoice.
Next up was going to be Noah Salson, and I'll just give you a highlight of what he wanted to talk to you about real quick. We've been meeting the trailer park that sits behind Family Dollar. That land has been purchased by an individual, and he has come to Build Generation and the state and said he's willing to sell it to the residents. And there's a statewide program. I'll let Noah fill in the details, but this could be a huge deal because if they don't buy it, then he's going to sell in the marketplace and 30 homes are going to get scraped. So I don't want to get into a lot of detail. I'll let Noah really talk to you about that. But we had a great meeting, me and 2 of the county commissioners and the people in the state who are working on this. So it's very interesting. I'll leave it at that.
So was there a prior owner? Was that recently purchased by a new owner who then wants to?
It is my understanding it is fairly recent purchase. And that person is willing to turn it at $1.5 million. So I'm sure they'll make a handsome profit off of it.
the Denver Post had a fairly depressing article this weekend on that program that the state of Colorado put in, which essentially for trailer parks or mobile home parks, says that when the landowner is looking to sell, they have to consider a purchase option or a fair market option from the residents if they want to form a coalition. That way they would actually own the land that their park is on, which doesn't happen. Usually you just own your mobile home, which interestingly is chattel property. You can't get regular mortgage rates when you buy a mobile home. You pay a completely different interest rate, typically a lot higher than what we pay on our houses. And they don't own the land underneath. And so the landowner is the one who then would apply rent for the spot. And the new owners, a lot of them are sort of these national organizations that own like 30 different trailer parks. And sometimes what happens is those rates go up rapidly to the point where the people who currently live there can no longer afford the balance between their high interest rate on their quote mobile home and the rent for the land. The idea is that if they can form a coalition and purchase it, they would have a lot more control over what facilities, like you could put a park and, for your kids, you could, make these decisions almost like a giant HOA for how you want your neighborhood to be and what sort of facilities you want to have or available for the people who live there. I do know that this particular group is really forming a great coalition. I think they're meeting weekly.
Do you mean the resident group?
Mhm,
Okay.
yeah.
They've already formed a committee.
Right, I hear really good things about how, how they're really gelling together and they're getting a lot of help from a group, I believe, out of Boulder.
It is Boulder.
Yeah.
That's correct.
That's giving them a lot of guidance on that, but
Plus, what you'll find for NOAA, as long as we've gone this far, is that of the 1.5 million, there is a grant in place for half of that. That does not have to be repaid. It is literally a grant to make this happen. $750,000.
Wow.
So they have to fund the other $750,000, which is what Andy and Boulder is working on. So I'm going to steal NOAA's thunder, but
well, the depressing article was that, yes, there's this new law in place, but there are only 2 parks that have been successfully purchased by the residents in Colorado, although there have been many, many attempts. And it seems that since there's not a whole lot of enforcement for landowners to have had to negotiate in good faith, that a lot of them have already set up some kind of deal with an outside company and then turn around and administer a notice to the residents that this place is for sale, here's what I would accept, here's an offer I would accept, see what you can do without ever having an intention to actually accept the resident's offer.
Right.
And so that was my question. If it's a new purchase, like and I know you can't answer this, but how is the relationship then between?
the relationship is apparently very positive. They plan, if this all happens, and Andy has put all the pieces in place. And he said this will be the 6th one they've done in Colorado for his organization. And that will close by the end of the year. So it's happening very quickly and
Super exciting.
it's certainly, because if it doesn't happen, we have 30 families who have nowhere to go. And I mean, they can't move their motorhomes. Some of them can't be moved by law. And some could be moved, but where are they going to move them to? And it's very expensive to move them. So sorry, we digress. Thank you.
I'm just trying to play out time a little.
Yes,
bit.
Patrick, go ahead.
What community is this?
Pardon me?
What community is this?
This is the trailer park behind Family Dollar. It doesn't have a name that I've ever been aware of.
It does, but it escapes me now. It actually hurt me.
The $750,000 grant is already in place.
Yes.
Like they got it.
Very cool.
Yeah. Wonderful. I think they just
Wow.
found that out.
So the question from Noah will be, is there a way in which the city might be able to participate to help make this happen? And, again, don't know, that's rhetorical in nature, but we did discuss some things in the meeting the other day. Infrastructure, different types of help that could occur. Okay.
Wow.
All right, sorry, Noah. Next up, we have the city projected revenues. Donna, the floor is yours.
Did you say rejected? What did you say?
Did I say that?
Project.
Projected? It's like, did we?
Could be rejected. I don't know. We're gonna find out. No fair. Donna, I did work on this extensively. We went over every line item. But that doesn't mean, and there are a couple of these that maybe still have some questions associated with them. Not the least of which is severance tax, which we last year budgeted at $90,000. And then we have received from the state the expectation that will go up by 30%. However, we've only received $44,000 to date. So we're a little nervous about that line item.
I thought severance tax was slowly winnowing away.
Just they say it is now accelerating. So I agree with you. We were surprised to get that note from the state to expect a 30% increase.
Do we get severance taxes from minerals extracted within city limits?
There are minerals extracted within city
Well,
limits.
that was going to be my follow-up question. Or do we just get a portion
We
of
get-
severance taxes
That's what I.
from within our county or?
I think it actually is within our county. And I don't, do you know the answer to that? But I think it's not like a statewide percentage.
Okay.
I think there is a formula by which we get severance taxes from those I don't know, funding that happens locally.
Okay.
And I don't know.
Because I
what
was
locally
wondering if
means.
some of these local re-milling operations would be resulting in severance taxes that.
They don't
we get.
actually exist yet in,
Oh, really? What
No.
about the Box Creek one? It seems to be going.
Box Creek is a gold mine. It's possible between Climax and Box Creek. I guess those are possibilities. What do you think, Davey?
Any mining operation has to pay tax.
Right.
To the state.
But I'm not sure exactly how they divide it up, because like Ethan's group, they get severance tax funds, and how do they
From
decide how much?
DOT or something? Or like, are they part of DOT?
They're part of DNR,
DNR.
but yeah, so I don't know how they decide. I'm not
Interesting.
sure if we get it just decided.
All right.
Anyway,
But I thought it was going
we're-
away.
Donna and I are nervous about that number
Okay.
because we haven't seen the balance of our $90,000 yet this year, which
Okay.
about half of it's still missing in action. So we'll see.
Because I thought that there had been some Supreme Court ruling that was going to make severance tax winnow away because it had been challenged as.
I don't think I'd heard that.
I'll see if
I think it was.
Had to do with the oil drilling.
It had a
and
lot more to do with.
reduction
the-
and fracking.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Interesting.
Okay.
That was my understanding.
It is market dependent, I believe.
It is very market dependent.
Yeah.
But we didn't raise it above $90,000 just as a projection.
Mhm.
We have not filled in the animal shelter yet. Explain to us what the status on that is.
Well, that animal shelter revenue is from the county's share of it. They pay 50%, but they also pay 50% of their animal share expenditures, but they also have to take out, we have to take out 50% of their revenue. So this is a formula in this spreadsheet. So until we calculate the expenditures, we have no idea how much the county's going to pay us.
Gotcha. But do you think it will be in the ballpark of last year, or what's your thought on that?
I really think it will be.
Because we don't have any dramatic changes to the animal shelter budget that we know of. Okay, all right. thank
Is that why the actuals are about 50% of the budget? It looks like for the past few years.
This, yes.
Okay,
Last year was the first year that we were informed that we also had to give the county 50% of the revenue. So that is probably true, yes,
Which is only fair.
which is only fair.
Yeah, no, we had no problem with that. It just had never happened in the past. We've talked to the county about redoing the IGA for the animal shelter for a couple of reasons. Number one is we made a unilateral decision to take the police department out of the animal shelter budget because the police department wasn't doing anything with the animal shelter, yet we were able to charge 30% of the police officer's salary against the animal shelter. And we unilaterally felt like that was simply silly. It was unfair.
gotcha.
So again, the IGA needs to be revisited along with lots and lots and lots of other things. We have a fire department IGA that needs to be revisited as well because of the Southern Fire Station. We're not accounting for a lot of those issues. Yes.
Before we keep going, what is the column 2022 final budget? Is that kind of what you're proposing? You've put some placeholders in that you propose here? Okay.
Well, most of them are more than placeholders. These are our calculations based on,
Okay.
what we know.
So what
Or
you're
sorry,
saying
yeah, better way to say it.
is that we're gonna receive at the end $4.9 million. That's what we have to work with.
That is correct. Keep in mind that about almost $1 million of that is grant pass-throughs.
From
You know,
Tabor.
Tabor Opera House is one, and then the PIP grant is the other. Well, I guess that's all. Tabor Opera House.
That's what makes our revenues look so humongous.
They can make them, yes.
And in the upper right corner of page 1, the general fund budget surplus, that is how much we have outside that's just sitting there in the bank.
That's what we can.
No, that's not quite true. I mean, basically, once we start filling out all the budgets, all expenditures, this is just revenues. When we do all expenditures, they buy this down. At the end of the day, that will be a zero-sum budget.
So that's currently just a sum of the revenue,
Right.
right?
This is the sum of all the revenue here. I thought the sum of the revenue was in the back.
Okay, so I will explain that. So yes, it is a different figure, and that's
Oh.
because of the fact that I've got labor that is not in here already formulated into this, that some labor, like you guys, labor or your wages are already factored into this.
It's all formulated, and as we work on, so some department budgets have some labor in them already, but we haven't finalized them, but so they're buying this number down.
Okay.
At the end of the day, when we're done, that's a zero.
Okay,
Gotcha.
what is?
So it has nothing to do with available funds, you know.
Doesn't reflect the reserve.
Right.
I guess that's what I'm asking is what do we have in our reserve right now?
We have 3.1. This is, you know, my approximation. Well, actually, by the end of the year, depending on if our taxation is on track to do what we expect it to do, we'll be at about 3.5.
And what are we statutorily required?
3 months.
3 months of city.
But it's actually not a statutory requirement. It is a recommendation from DOLA. That they want municipalities to have 3 months of operating expense at zero income, which never made sense to me, but that's okay. But there is no statutory requirement.
Yeah.
So that 3 month total would be,
Well, 3 months of $3.4 million would be about $300,000. No, is that right?
It's
No,
like, yeah,
that math is all wrong.
it's just under $1 million.
Thank you. I've got a calculator right here.
Yeah, well, we're doing the big.
maybe the more important question is, what do we want to have in reserve?
I've said, I think our reserve should be 1.7 million. That's what I think, because at 50% revenue, that's a year. I don't think the same way DOLA is. They want us to calculate it on 0% revenue, which we would never expect to happen. But in a real economic downturn, maybe we're at 50% revenue, worst case scenario. And so I think 1.7 million is the reserve we should shoot for. That's
So
a
that's
year.
1 year with 50%.
That's correct,
revenue.
with 50% revenue.
I mean,
It's
I'm
about
just,
2.5 at 0%.
Can I ask about,
2.5
right.
million if- that we
sorry, I
would
didn't
need to
study up
operate
on that.
0%.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm sorry,
I
what?
didn't study up on the sales tax numbers, but this 2.4 is
on yours.
conservative, is that right? Or is that an actual number?
No, it's not actual. It is, I wouldn't call it conservative because what we did is we took half of the tax in this year and put it into this budget. Half of the tax that was over and above our budget. Remember, we were a little bit aggressive last year in terms of the taxation, and we still may have $1 million over budget in sales tax revenue this year. And so we took half of that saying, okay, let's say taxes level out. Let's say they may even drop some. We don't know, but they would have to drop dramatically for this budget not to be sound. And I think it's still a reasonably conservative number.
So you added 500,000.
Yes.
That's
Since
where that's
last
coming
year.
from there from last year.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And
And
so
then
overall, the budget increased by $494,000.
for this year, we have 494,000.
I'm saying that's how much we've projected in the 2020 budget. That's more than the 2021 budget.
Right, right, right.
$494,000, yes.
So we have $500,000 more to spend.
That's correct. Now, we may not need to spend that.
And
I
can
mean,
I
in other
just,
words, this number could change based on when we get deep into the budget. We may say, we don't need that entire $494,000 to accomplish what we need to accomplish as a city.
And I will just say that we did receive the check Friday, I think it was, from the county, biggest sales tax on ever of $301,000.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
How much was it over
So that
budget?
was
Do you remember?
September.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
it's,
and this, you know, when Tracy and the EDC took this deeper dive on the sales tax numbers, what did they come up with?
Well,
Is
what
it
they,
brick and mortar? Is it Wayfair? What?
you would have to look, I've seen it in graph form, but I can't quote it to you. They have it all in a graph form that they've distributed.
I can explain a little bit. It is broken down by remote sales. And we've separated out by city and county, and we've separated it out by business sectors / clusters. So we have retail, we have retail, we have hospitality, restaurants broken down. Pretty much it's called NAICS codes. So pretty much every NAICS code for each month, we know, and like I said before, it's helped us with the recruiting process, but we know what the consumers are spending. The only caveat or issue that we can't extrapolate from the data is if it's a resident or if it's a tourist or someone that's, coming for the race series or, short-term rental. We cannot differentiate that.
Okay, so I guess my bottom line question is, where is all the extra revenue coming from? Is it within the community or is it from these online sales, or where's the meat of,
Or sales tax.
where is it coming from? Where's the extra revenue coming from?
Excellent question. It's a little bit of both. It's about, and I can give you those measurables and breakdown. It's about 30% remote sales. And it's an interesting dynamic. It's things like beauty, healthcare. So we know that we need another pharmacy or some type of facilities like that. But we also see an increase in wine sales remotely, which I think is kind of funny. And the one that sort of scares me is that is a high percentage, and I don't have the number on top of my head without pulling out the data, but it's sale of ammunition. People are buying that online. The bricks and mortar is strongly the retail and restaurant if you just look at the city side.
Marla, would you be able to share some of those graphs or that?
Absolutely. The Geek Squad has dug deep, and I was trying to pull up the document because give me 2 seconds and I can, the increase for August for the city was $74,709. But I can submit and send you some information about the different purchases and consumer spending.
Or in terms of what we think of it, what was the budget
For
for
which month?
for the next month that's not populated there?
September.
Yes.
So September was budgeted at 203 and we got 301.
Right. So $98,000 increase
Yeah.
month.
Marla, if you could have those graphs for us before we meet about the budget again.
Absolutely.
Marla,
Because I
if you
think that
will,
can direct
yeah.
some of our decisions.
Yeah, and if you could send those to me, I will distribute them to city council. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
So Mayor, before we get into these extras.
Yeah, those are just conversations right now, but go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to say that we are seeing an increase in numbers. We are seeing an increase in requests from our community.
Mhm.
And I also think I'm going to talk about the street and paving and the nice to dos versus the needs to dos. And I really feel that maybe in a couple years, we can put another something to the voters on perhaps getting them to do some sort of.
Well, that's one possibility. The other is we talked about a certificate of participation. You know, in order to put in place, let's say a 20-year, $4 million bond that would not have to go to a vote. But then we'd be obligated for 20 years for that $200,000 a year that we're already obligating ourselves to. And we might be able to do that by next summer.
And I would actually ask I mean, if I had an ask without a presentation, I want to increase the amount that we're putting towards the paving fund. I'm just saying, I would like to make it so we have less to pay off or more to provide to the citizens of Leadville. So we're not, I mean, as I know the city of Leadville we have always been fiscally responsible where we don't have these debts, we don't have these bonds, and we don't have these things. And I don't necessarily want to create something that is new or something that's going to continue on with other things besides paving. But
Yeah.
I guess you know how I feel about this issue, so I will not belabor this. But I do feel if we do have a reserve of $3.1 million, and I don't know where everybody sits on tapping into that reserve to put more money into something or to fund these. I just think we have to come up with a sustainable model. And
I would say a couple of things to that point. And one is, that was why I was quizzing the auditors, you know, because I am very, you know, ill prepared to feel like I really know what I'm doing about taking on debt. But they said we're one of the very few municipalities that they deal with that doesn't have any debt. And then we were talking about the certificate of participation, and they seem to have a certain confidence level in being able to use that as a tool to take on bonding. So I totally agree with you, and I think it's something we should do. And the other part I've said, probably for the last 6 months, is I feel like there's a point at which holding this kind of money is irresponsible for us as a city. We need to be putting this to work for our citizens. And so I 100% agree with you.
And to your point there is that even if somebody says that we should have X amount of dollars in reserve, I don't think we should just cut it back there right away. I think that we should incrementally see and still be fiscally conservative with our reserves, but still maybe draw down that reserve an amount that the city council feels responsible to do, but not to that amount that puts us at what's considered the bare bones minimum that we should have. I just feel like, let's see, are we Are we are we actually taking money out or are we putting more in? I mean, I don't know.
Well, and I think that the tricky part there is that I think it's really easy to look at our reserve and say, oh, you know, let's spend X amount on some capital, like let's buy a sandbox for the street department. That's a really easy consideration, but we know we have these salaried positions that we want to add, and that's not only an addition, but we have to sustain that addition and possibly expand upon it. And at least I have a harder time visualizing how to safely tap into the reserve to help fund those, because they are sustained positions and not just like, let's take $500,000 and buy a paving machine.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that if we have revenue coming in annually, we should probably stay within that revenue that's coming in annually for our salary and expenses for the fiscal year. But like, if we're, I don't know, I know that this is a big discussion that we should have, and that's why we're here, before your bedtime. But anyways, I just want to make my case that, I mean, what is sustainable? There's some asks from the Tabor, from our presentations today. They all have their needs. A lot of them are at 80% or more than what we've already requested. That is, I think, if that is what we're looking at into the future, or is that something that we can sustain in the future? For example, we're not going to be able to commit to Tabor's 3-year request for $100,000. We're doing it for this fiscal year, right? And so, what is a more sustainable approach if they need to get there? How can we make them seek out other opportunities for those capital needs?
It's a great question, and I actually had a note on that. And here's the issue, because what we find in fundraising, it's an excellent point, but what we find in fundraising is you can't fundraise for operations. There's no such thing. No one will give you money for operations. And so you can fundraise for a lot of different things, but operationally, there just aren't grants out there for operations. So that's an issue for any kind of nonprofit to have to deal with.
It's just some thoughts that I've been having after listening so far.
All right, thank you. We'll jump back into this in a minute. Noah is here to speak to us. Noah, if you'd come up to the microphone, please, and talk to us about the project that you're contemplating.
Is this on? Good evening. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me jump in. So it's not necessarily a 2022 budget conversation, but it's something that's emerging, hopefully by the end of the year, and started having conversations with Greg last week. I wanted to make sure that council was in the loop as well, around an opportunity to preserve some affordable housing in the city. So the community behind the manufactured housing community behind Family Dollar, the owner is looking to sell that property. And because of some recent legislation in Colorado, they're legally required to offer the property to the residents. But the owner is going above and beyond and really making an effort to make that a possibility. So the owner of the property actually invited Thistle Community Partners into the conversation. And Thistle's out of Boulder, and they're a partner organization of Rock USA, which is resident-owned communities, which is a national organization that helps convert corporate or commercially owned manufactured housing communities into resident-owned communities. So I don't know how much time I should spend talking about this, or how familiar folks are with the model of manufactured housing, but essentially, especially in our community, there's high rates of home ownership in these communities, but folks don't own the land on which their house is located. So they pay space rent to a commercial landlord in order to keep their house located there. So the model of a ROC, or resident-owned community, is that the residents form a cooperative with the Secretary of State and collectively own the land. And so they still pay space rent to the cooperative, but that money goes towards paying down the loan that they would take out in order to purchase the property management, any maintenance or upkeep of the property, and none of it goes towards profiting a commercial entity. And therefore rents are able to remain stable into the future at rates far lower than if it was commercially owned. So there are 30 units of housing on the property. The owner's asking for $1.5 million for the sale of the property. And Village Generation has been working with Thistle and Rock to organize the residents, make sure that this is something that they're interested in. And then the point that we're at now is trying to put together a funding package and make sure that it's financially feasible, and trying to understand how much money can we bring to the table to close on the property before the end of the year, and then what would that look like in terms of rent payments into the future. So we have there's a foundation in Colorado that is willing to they haven't fully committed it, but they've started the conversation to commit up to half of that amount. And the foundation, as well as the Rock Capital, Resident Owned Communities Capital, that would fund a significant portion of the rest of that purchase. Always like to see public support in these communities to make sure that it's, they're not funding something that, city council or commissioners would then try to zone out of existence or put pressure on to make them, to set them up for failure, right? So Andy is our contact at Thistle, and he'd be happy to come and talk to council sometime in the next coming weeks to talk specifics about what other communities have done. He can put you in contact with other city councils if that would be helpful. But at this point, we're working to get an engineering study done of the property to understand what infrastructure and deferred maintenance might exist, so that all of that can be rolled into the final loan package, so that there aren't repairs in the first few years or even within the first 20 years that residents weren't expecting and that would bankrupt them. So all of those costs would be rolled into their final loan, so that they can responsibly take care of their property. Questions? Other things that would be helpful to know?
Who's we heard a little bit from the mayor and from Dana about that things seem to be going pretty well with the resident coalition.
Yeah.
Who's involved in facilitating that or leading it, or is it?
So the residents, they have incorporated, they have a corporation called Nuevo Union. There's a fully seated board of 5 community members who are on that board, and they're meeting weekly now with folks from Village Generation and Andy to keep that process moving forward. Cool. So hopefully, if everything goes smoothly and they close on the property, they'll probably meet monthly after the close, but right now there's a lot to get done, and organizing all of the residents, making sure that everybody in the community is up to speed on what the process might look like and is on board with it, right? So Rock has a 75% threshold where 75% of the community needs to be on board with the process in order for them to stay involved. Because obviously if there's less than that, then it's harder to maintain into the future. So they're at that threshold and continue to be doing good work. And Rock does, if everything moves forward, they do kind of stay in the picture, kind of provide TA and support to the community for 10 years after the purchase as well. There are 281 communities in the country right now that Rock has supported, 5 in Colorado, and none of them have ever defaulted or fallen apart. It's a really, really amazing model.
So what exactly is your ask from council?
So we're doing the engineering study now. We're going to try to start to understand what some of those infrastructure needs might be. I think financial support is always appreciated. the funding that's been committed or semi-committed right now would still increase rents. Not significantly, but I think we're at like $65 a month per unit. And I think where we're at now, any additional $100,000 that we raise would bring down families' monthly payments on the loan $240.
But that wouldn't include all the other ancillary services, snow removal,
Correct.
maintenance, all those things that are, and utilities are currently built into their monthly payment.
Right. Yeah. So exactly. Like there's in-kind support that could be provided. I think most of their property is on city streets anyway, so it probably gets plowed and maintained. But Andy is definitely the resource for creative supports, and he'd be happy to come talk to y'all if that's something that you're interested in. But other communities have put together like no interest, no payment loans that need to be paid back upon the sale of the property, right? So if the property ever did get sold, then that money would come back to the city. But it's essentially a grant functionally because there's no payments, as long as the rock exists. Or you could also structure it as a low interest loan or a grant, depending. And so I think we're hoping to have the capital improvements plan completed sometime in November, and that'll give us a better idea of how much infrastructure or utility repair needs to be done. Because right now we're kind of obviously just estimating, and that impacts the loan payments and rent payments.
Any questions for Noah?
Do you think there will be, do you think you'll have some numbers in time to ask city council to budget for this coming year? Potentially some support?
So for 2022?
Yeah.
So the property, the owner set the deadline of closing in 2021
Okay.
in order to maintain the sale to residents. So I think it would be kind of a quick turnaround 2021 general fund request and not an allocated 2022 request.
I see.
We could, if that's asking too much or too difficult, I think we could put together some bridge financing with Rock that could be paid off quickly in 2022, if that's easier.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
It was in my mind that probably this was not a 2022 budget item, that there was something we might have to react to before the end of the year. But we would, I mean, I'll just speak for myself, say I'd like to know more about, what would that ask look like?
Okay.
Is it a buy down of the loan? Is it an infrastructure help with infrastructure issues before the closing of the loan, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think functionally to the residents and to the cooperative, it's the same, right? Like those are both costs that they will be paying down equally in their monthly payments.
Gotcha.
So if there's something that's more palatable to council or aligns more with your priorities for 2022, then either or I think makes sense.
And any support from the city not only would have the direct impact of the support, but would also communicate to other funding sources. And did you say the Rock that would indicate to them that there's community
exactly
buy-in?
Yeah. So if it was decided that making it a 2022 priority was easier or a better fit, I think it would still be helpful to have a letter of support from council that we could have before the end of November for the closing of the property.
All right.
Any other questions for Noah?
Does that community have a name? Or is it just the park that's behind?
I think we've always called it the Leadville Mobile Home Park. I think it's technically Arrow Mobile Home Parks. I don't know. Family Dollar.
That's funny. I've never.
Everybody knows it
No,
as
that's
the.
correct. I looked on the assessor's map.
Oh, okay.
After you presented to
Okay.
us, before it is.
Arrow, yeah.
Am I allowed to ask some questions?
You are.
Okay. If the city, pulled out of this, would this also count as one of the things for, our grant funding?
Ooh, what a great question.
That's a great question. I haven't seen that full list in a while.
2A, and we show that the city's participating in
Yeah.
something like this. Perhaps that would also help us with some larger funds that are coming down.
Well, because it shows a commitment to affordable housing. That's a great thought.
Yeah, I'll talk to Andy about that because he probably knows that.
Okay. Noah, thanks for all the work you've done on this.
Yeah,
It's kind of exciting. I
It's,
mean,
it's
you pull it
incredible,
off.
exciting, yeah. Yeah, and thank you all for your support. I'm here tonight because I'm able to be here, but honestly, it has been like a resident driven. They put in so much time, right? Like they're meeting like 2 or 3 hours every week to make this happen. So this is like a quick thing that I could pop in and do for them, but we're supporting, but it's really their work.
I would tell you when we met with them the other day, I'm not quite sure how to express it. They were so thrilled and surprised that the city and county would even be having this conversation with them because they did not expect that whatsoever. It is an Hispanic community, and they really, I think they deeply appreciated the fact that we were at the table with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like this whole process has been like very quickly eye-opening, right? Like, and inspiring for them. And it's been great. I mean, like, yeah, like crisis, like leaders built out of crisis, right? Like these 5 folks like stepped up immediately and they've done a really great job.
Nice. Any last questions for Noah?
I think this goes without saying, but the property is adjacent to the rail yard, right? So if this doesn't get purchased by the residents, it will go to the open market and it will likely be redeveloped. And maybe it will be housing, but it won't house 30 families at that income level in our community. So,
Thank you very much, Noah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts on this? And I just want to go over here and no decision points tonight. I just want to kind of throw out the sorts of things we're looking at and a couple other, kind of maybe big ticket items that are at least thoughts at this point and may not be something we could dive into. Don't know. And a lot of, when I talk to departments, we're not necessarily talking about 2022 expenses. For us as the fire department, you'll see we're looking at 5 years down the road. So with your permission, I'll go over a couple of those things.
As long as we don't have to put stickers on something.
Where are the stickers? Who's got the stickers?
I won't do anything that doesn't involve stickers.
No, see, Tim, if I gave you stickers, then that would mean I cared what your opinion was.
That's fine.
I mean, the elementary school stickers are like a currency.
If you just do one side, what happens? Okay, these are just some conversations. There's a couple of big ticket items here that I don't have numbers on yet. The street department needs an expansion of their shop. I'll kind of leave it at that. We've looked at different possibilities. They're giving you numbers now. I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't $300,000-$400,000 to expand that shop, but I don't want to get into too much detail. I just want to give you an idea of the thought process.
And do you think that'd be like a single year cost, or would that be?
Well, and then that's a good question. Do we look at that as a 10-year cost and go ahead and put it in the budget rather than as a capital request? Don't know. We have to see. It is so hard to get anybody to quote on anything right now. It's like pulling teeth. And to get more than one contractor to ever bid on something is just like, you almost can't do it. So anyway, snow blower, they're looking that up. There are a couple different choices. The snow blowers have to be pushed by the unloader, okay? And that's that Zog snow blower that we're talking about. That's the big mama. So we're looking at one that actually has a motor. We think it might be in the $260,000 range, but I'm trying to get pricing on that. And we're also trying to find out if our biggest loader will push this thing. I need to know that. And also we would like another Mack truck. Right now, we bought, the truck we bought a couple of years ago was a hook truck and then has 3 different boxes. And so we like another Mack truck, but it probably won't happen this year. But these are just thought processes with a rock box, the hook truck with a rock box. On the lower end of the spinning spectrum, sandbox for the pickup truck, which street department feels like would be very helpful. A car lift and a truck lift in our maintenance shop. The county now has a truck, these truck lifts that they actually roll around. They're computerized and they lift, a dump truck or a major piece of equipment into the air for maintenance. The car lift is much lower priced. We do a lot of work taking care of the police department vehicles. And so that car lift would help them in terms of that maintenance. U-Blade, we bought one last year. The street department absolutely loves that thing and would like another one. They attach on the front of the loader, and that's this U-Blade is then it expands out, and then they can control one side or the other to really move snow properly. So these are just some ideas right now in terms of what, some of these may be in the 2022 budget in terms of what we bring to city council, but right now those are just ideas. The fire
Can you use
department,
a truck lift to lift a car?
you cannot, and I asked the same question because could we use the truck lifts for both? Because of the way they lift, the answer is no.
Mayor, before we go on to the fire.
Yeah.
Can we just go back to the street department? Here?
Yes.
Is what kind of, we talked about some sort of agreement between county, road and bridge and the street department. Is there certain duplicates on this that perhaps that they could partner with the county with, for example, do they have a sandbox or an old sandbox that we can purchase or have donated from them?
That would work, but for instance, a street sweeper, that might be something we could share with them. One of the things we talked about was maybe a lay down machine that we shared with them. I kind of gave up on that. I wasn't getting proper response out of the county. It's still a possibility.
They're not pavers either.
Exactly.
That's
well, actually,
they're not professional.
They are not
pavers.
professionals.
Well,
and-
they did pave at the end of the season, and we ran out of time before they got to us, figures. We helped them pave like the intersection at the end of at McQuethy and 6th. That was redone. The high school, in front of the high school parking lot was
My point
redone.
exactly.
Yeah, so we,
My point exactly. I mean, they did a good job. They did a good college try on that, but it's not a professional paving job.
Right around that post.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
right.
but so we've also talked about the possibility of a snow blower, something that's better than what they have that breaks down all the time is having a Zog, which is a ribbon style that doesn't lock up. The one that they have is an auger style, and it goes out of service all the time. So the answer is that it's a very good point, and having that conversation with them is kind of an ongoing thing for us.
And I mean, to our, just something that you mentioned too, I mean, we talked about switching the street department and making it the parks in street department, for example, just because of the org chart consideration that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the seasonal parks person reports directly to you. They work really
We don't
well
want that
with
to
them.
be in the future, but
And-
yes.
And I guess my point is, I just heard that they do maintenance on police vehicles.
Hmm.
I did not know that they were also the fleet maintenance for the city as well.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I'm curious if there is.
Well, it's been a work in progress. I think they finally got somebody trained to do that.
To do what?
To do kind of like fleet maintenance.
No,
Whereas-
we've had that person for a long time. We've actually been doing for instance, police cars for years. But the shop, I was in there reviewing the shop the other day. They're really setting it up nicely. We have, won't get into all the details, but they're really doing a nice job of setting that up to take care of all of our maintenance, because the street department maintenance is a major thing. That equipment needs maintenance constantly. And I'm talking about mostly periodic maintenance, but that's expensive in the oils, because it's Caterpillar, they really love their products.
Yeah, anyways, I was just saying that I didn't know that they maintain the police department vehicles. I know that they maintain their own vehicles. Is that what the road department does for the sheriff's office as well, or how do they maintain the sheriff's office?
I have no idea. What we can't maintain is fire department equipment, because that requires special certifications that are very difficult to come by. And that's why whenever we put a fire department piece of equipment in the shop, it's 10 times what it would cost any other piece of equipment ever. It is the biggest scam you've ever seen in your entire life. Okay. Not that I have an opinion on that or anything. Fire department, they're talking about, the fire management board met and we talked about putting $100,000, which would be 70-30, in the fire fund balance each year. Just put it in there to at least as a starting point for starting to catch up with capital needs for equipment. But also that fire fund balance is the money that comes from wildland fire. And I don't know what the average is. I think in 2020, we did about $200,000 into the fire fund balance. Donna, is that about right?
I think, yes, it's about right. I think it's a little low, actually. but
Okay.
it's-
And so plus the $100,000 that the management board thinks we would add to that, all of a sudden we start having a fund that really can effectively help us in the future for vehicle purchases. The next purchase, and as you know, we're doing a Type 3 engine in 2022, although in terms of the budgetary pressure on that, we don't think we're going to get it until about 6 months in. So, but nonetheless, and then in 2023, we have a ladder truck. A Quint is a vehicle that is like a Type 1 engine that's also a ladder truck, and will do a lot of different things. And we think they're about $700,000, but our ladder truck is at end of life. It's costing us a small fortune to keep it maintained. A new ladder truck, just a ladder truck, is about $1 million. I'm sorry, yeah, about $1 million. And so the Quint is an answer. What we're doing is investigating whether the Quint will properly service our community, because it only has a 75-foot ladder. And we're doing some research, the fire department is, into will that reach all the buildings in our community? Will a 75-foot ladder on a Quint, do what we need for it to do?
What's
So
our current ladder?
Huh?
What's our current ladder?
I think it's 105 feet. It's huge. But if we buy the Quint, then we get the combination of a Type 1 engine and a ladder truck that has a lot more functionality. And I think the Quint's also maybe all-wheel drive. They do a lot of very specialty things.
How tall is the flagpole down at Community Park?
I don't know.
I would have been impressed if you did.
He has amazing.
It's really, really tall.
Yeah.
In the next 4 to 6 years, we're going to need a new Type 1 engine. The newest Type 1 engine we have right now is a 2016. That's considered a 10-year lifespan now, which seems ridiculous to me because we don't have anything that's less than 10 years old in the fire department. That's not quite true, but they say 10 years. I'm not buying it, but nonetheless, at some point we have to start thinking, between 2026 and 2028 of another Type 1 engine, which is we paid about $650 for the one we have now. We think probably we have to ballpark it. We don't know, $700,000. This year, the fire department would like an extractor, and that's about $12,000. And it would also like about $30,000 infusion into finishing up what they hope, finishing up the training center. And I was out there walking all through the training center, and they have done a lot with what they have. But they think it's gonna take about $30,000 to finish it up. Making it fully functional for all the different training purposes, whether it's police department, sheriff's office, fire department, you know, any emergency services can use that training center. And it's our hope that having that training center will draw the police academy to CMC. And that's the conversation that's going on with them.
So
Go ahead.
just to clarify, because I kind of ran into this last year about this whole split. This is all split with the county, right? All
Yeah,
these
70-30.
70-30.
Correct. Now, if we wanted to take one of these and make an outright capital purchase, we would have to negotiate that with the county, because what the 70-30 split in the IGA is for the budgeted items. So this Type 3 engine is a budgeted item. It was not a separate capital investment, but rather it was put into the budget over 5 years at $72,000 a year. And so that's a 70-30 split. Okay. Yes, Dave.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, go
Go
ahead.
back, the fire stuff reminded me of this, but can we please return to discussing a Plime event for the street department?
Oh, you know, I'd forgotten all about it, but they never bought it. We
Yeah.
funded it and they never did it. But in their defense, they couldn't get a vendor that could supply one at the cost that we had quoted.
Yeah, I don't want that to fall through the cracks.
Okay.
I missed what you said, Dan.
The Plime event, so the fire department has these special events that they can hook onto the exhaust pipes of the vehicles, so that when they're in their garage and they start them up, all of that diesel fume gets sucked out. The street department just goes into that building, and so they're just filling that airspace with
Wow.
carcinogens and really bad things.
That is
Guys who are working
wonderful.
there.
Thank you very much. We will make sure this is in the budget at the proper price in 2022.
Cool.
A couple of things that this is, I'm just throwing this out there just to let you know that there are some things that we may want or need to consider as a city. And one of those is, if it were to come up and there was a housing option that we could invest in as a city, you know, would we consider that, depending on the price, of course?
Yeah.
Is that a capital investment that we might consider for employee housing?
So you're talking about the possibility of, say, purchasing a home to put new police recruits.
Yeah, let's say a 4-bedroom home came in the marketplace. I don't know. And it was at a price that we felt like was worthwhile as an investment from the city. That doesn't seem likely to me because the price that those are going for. But what if they, you know, let's say, you know, we, in my mind, we blew it when the Alps Hotel was for sale. And we were talking to them about buying it, and we didn't pull the trigger on that deal. And at that time, it was about $350,000. This was a couple of years ago. I'm still kicking myself for not making that investment for the city. But nonetheless, here we are, you know. So if something were to come up, you know, as a city, or is that something, you know, I'm not asking, it's rhetorical in nature, you know, is that something we might consider going into the future, is making an investment in some sort of housing?
As a federal employee, I will just say that we're terrible landlords.
Oh, no doubt.
We are terrible landlords. And also, I don't know if the city wants to get into owning housing. That could be, who knows what happens inside those or what could happen. What I would, instead, I would like to subsidize housing somehow and make it so the cost of ownership or rental is affordable. Could it be a stipend for somebody that's an employee here for the city? Do they get some sort of living stipend? Do we pay for the tap fees to lower the prices to make affordable housing? What are we gonna do with that property that we own in the Leadville Rail Yards? How are we gonna capitalize on that? So I think I'm in on employee housing in some way.
Yeah.
I just don't know if the 4-bedroom house is.
And you may be exactly right. I don't want us to be landlords. Maybe if we're given the opportunity for a master lease, you know, something like that, which a lot of companies and even cities do, is they'll take like an apartment complex, let's say a 30, unit apartment complex, and they do a master lease on 10 units, so that they control then that they can put their people in there, and that's actually pretty common. Amy, do you have you run across that?
I've seen it happen a few times, not as much as I'm kind of surprised it hasn't happened more, especially with some of the larger employers around here. But yeah, I mean, it's guaranteed housing, and it's a lot cheaper than scrambling and losing out on your recruits.
And I'll tell you another conversation I had with a major employer who was talking about, to me about, would this employer in the city maybe be interested in developing a trailer park that would be temporary housing for employees? Because one of the issues we're all having, everybody's having, is we want to hire people, but then they can't come to work for us because there's nowhere to live. So I don't want to get into too much detail about that. That might be pretty speculative. I don't know if that would actually, come to fruition. But if that person came to us and said, would you, like to partner with us on this? Maybe that's something we could consider. The next thing, and this one's pretty far out there. The Tabor Opera House, it has been discovered, is in possession of one of the 3 most important scenery collections in the world. Not in Colorado, not in the United States, in the entire world. We have one of the 3 most important scenery collections that exist. And the problem is, that's a blessing. Sounds great, right? Now what do we do? Is there a place? Does the city need to make an investment in something that important? And again, rhetorical in nature. I just want you to be, that maybe down the road, and I mean not down the road very, very far, we may need to make a pretty bold move to save that collection and to have it in a way that it can be displayed. Don't know. Any thoughts on that? Am I completely out of my mind or just slightly?
No, I think we need to have that forward thinking. Because you're right. And we have it.
And if-
Now what do we do? Do we work to preserve it? Do we work to display it? Do we work to
Put it back in the alley.
put it in, back in the alley?
It was there for 100 years. I guess that's an
Installation
option.
as a
someone
part
else
of the
display it.
tour.
Yeah. The Tabor Opera House cannot accommodate. There's just no space for that. And there are enough of these. Do you have any idea how many we're talking about?
Over 300 pieces.
Is that, I mean, if it's that big and exciting, I imagine there's other stakeholder groups that might want to collaborate on that, right?
Well, and it will be difficult in that some of them are still up, we still have some up in the attic. We haven't, and most of them we did carry down, but we have to do all the inside, restoration. And what are we gonna do with them in that interim?
Right.
And because they were up and they were rolled up, it was in the dark. I mean, and we have a dry climate. I mean, they were actually pretty well preserved, but they desperately need cleaning. And all of these things take money. And there's a fear that if they leave the Tabor, but we've got to move them somewhere you know,
Purchase
so.
agreement actually does not allow them to leave the Tabor at this point.
Yeah, and because what has happened to many venues, if they've had something leave, it doesn't ever come back. And that is, those scenery pieces are so, they're fabulous. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So I think we need to have a plan, but I would suggest that, you know, working with the Tabor board to, you know, because with Wendy doing her her projects and workshops for cleaning them, she is a great resource. But I think the city needs to work and talk to the foundation.
There's huge, yes, and we have a subcommittee that we're discussing this, and I appreciate the mayor bringing this up because this, I mean, there's the conundrum of, you know, we want to be an arts center for but we can't display them if we're doing performances. We can't do performances if we're displaying.
Well, I don't want to get too deeply down that rabbit
So,
hole. I would say
it's just something that we would, yeah.
this wonderful discovery of this collection is a real burden and obligation on us, and I don't know how to deal with it.
People are already banging on the doors. Well, you know, what are you gonna do? Yeah, especially after the New York Times article.
Any other thoughts about lots of different ways we can spend our money? Yes.
Weren't we advised last week by the representative from DOLA to plan for a couple costs?
He threw out some costs. It wasn't clear to me what our obligation was there. Was it clear to anybody else? You know, I know he threw out a $20,000 cost and then a $200,000 cost if we were to ever get the $1 million grant.
Yeah,
there was some matching funding.
Those were the matching funds. that he talked about.
20,000.
Yeah.
yeah, I remember those numbers as well. I don't remember much detail about them, but that might be.
Let me
something to-
pursue that and
to
get it.
plan.
And
Thank you.
was that Michael Sked who was talking about that? Huh? Oh, Michael Yerman. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he does.
But
he
works for SCAD.
Oh, pardon me.
But nonetheless, I'm going to be in 2 different meetings with him in the next 2 weeks. And so I'll try and pin him down on that about, you know, what is the possibility of that being a realistic obligation for the city and in what time frame?
Okay.
All right.
Oh my God, we're 15 minutes away from his bedtime.
Tim.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
Is there anything else anybody?
The mayor doesn't care about my bedtime.
I care very much because remember, you tune my skis and I want you well rested.
I was so tired. I missed this.
I don't have a specific thing, but just more of guiding principle I'm thinking about is we've had some requests from like Economic Development Corporation as well as Tabor, which are things that are big investments, and I don't doubt they would have return in vibrancy and economic development. But I do think we really need to focus in on our economy, and the vibrancy is bigger than we can actually accommodate based on certain constraints right now, like housing, childcare, stuff like that. So before we pump more gasoline on that fire, I do think we need to really think about, and I think we are thinking about those things, but I just would put it out there that we kind of need to solve some of those constraints first, or at the same time.
There's so many people working on so many different things. I mean, you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
there's this whole big committee working on childcare, and there's a whole, housing coalition working on housing issues, and it's just there's so many things going on all at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a little tough to keep track of all of them.
It's true.
I would say the county. I don't know what their ask of the county was, but the county typically has put in a great deal more financially into the EDC than we have, which is fine. Even though I think we might have kind of an equal benefit, and the city may benefit more than the county does, but they've been pretty keen on funding the EDC. So
I mean, that's one thing I really appreciated the Tabor Opera House's presentation, is it gave me very clear numbers and visuals for like, here's the money that we have coming from this source, this source, this source. Here's the money that we have outgoing to this destination, this or this project. And, you know, here's what we anticipate doing next with this and with this increase in funding. And I just didn't, like, I would like to see that from the EDC, because I have no doubt that economic development is good for the city too, but I want to make sure that we're getting an appropriate return, because we don't own the EDC, they're not a department of the city. And so I think there's a bigger onus on them to show how our funds play out into benefit for the city.
Well, I think they got that message.
Oh, yeah, I'm
So
sorry.
I would say this. No, you're excellent. I would say this, and this is an important note because we tend to forget it. You know, the question has been asked in the past, why isn't the EDC under the city or the county? And the reason is because if let's say it was a county, a division of the county, then none of their conversations could be held in confidence. And that is a huge deal for people coming in, potentially, you know, wanting to know more about what the possibilities are in this community. EDC as a private corporation can absolutely hold those conversations in confidence.
And they can
So-
have those NDAs. Well, I don't want to, I agree with you, and I'm going to go back to your wish listing and what we're thinking about with like Tabor and the 300 pieces and really thinking about it. And back to your point on gasoline on the economic development. I mean, we have, for example, this is an example, the Big R store coming into town. And I know that's within the city, and so pause. Ski Cooper made their minimum wages $15.25, which is a quarter more than Bell Resorts, which might not actually be much, but you're not driving over to then park off-site, to then bus in, to then, you know, all this stuff to get there and be part of Bell Resorts. And so that's, I guess, turning our workforce that we have here, which is historically 70% outgoing. I am a new convert today to Leadville, thank you, officially. And how do we turn our workforce here for really good? I mean, it's going to be a store that has pig feed, chicken feed. It's going to have all the, I don't know, it's going to have too many pigs. So there's Carhartts and power tools and everything like that.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because Big R came in and talked to me, you know, about, you know, recruiting people. And I said, here's what you need. I had the same conversation with the Delaware. I said, here's what you need to do. You need to recruit people who are working over the hill.
Yeah.
That's your audience. You need to, you know, pay them appropriately. And those are conversations we're having internally in the departments. You know, how close do we have to get to that wage in order to make it, you know, attractive to them to not drive over the hill? And we think that delta is $6,000 to $8,000. Hard to put a hard number on it, but that's a real cost to people who are going over the hill on a daily basis. So
that's what I was thinking about that proposed hotel at the rail yard. I mean, there are people who drive all the way to Breckenridge.
those people,
To
that hotel and the Delaware Hotel, all those people exist. They have those skill sets. They're just taking them over to Vail. You know, so I think that those will be pretty easy hires, to your point.
I think those employers do need to think about, though, those folks might have been working with their business for many years, so they might be at a place where they don't want to just come take it necessarily an entry-level wage. So I do think that has to be part of that.
Well, that's up to them and understanding what they need to do to be competitive in this marketplace.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess my question is there anything that we can do as a city to help at least maybe go from 60 or 70 to 68%? Or,
I mean, personally, I think that's what the EDC needs to be doing, is building that demographic information that when these businesses come in, they can they can start educating them and say, you know, here's the kind of people who you could recruit, and here's the kind of salaries you may need to, because here's what they're making over here, et cetera. I mean, I really think that's the EDC's job, or I'd like to see them do that.
That is a constraint we're hitting, yeah.
I mean, I know, Server and Breckenridge is making $400 to $500 a night. That's what they're making. So I don't know if you're gonna be able to get somebody to switch over for a restaurant here. if they're making that. There's more money going over there, more people spending.
Right, you're right.
Yeah, but some of the more fixed wage jobs,
Yeah,
that,
fixed
that's
wage.
the other sections of, especially the service economy, would be.
Like a ski tech. Anybody know any ski techs that need a job?
You train them.
I'll pay them 15 and a quarter.
All right. It's a good wage. Free base flights.
Been up to CMC yet to?
I have a prospect from CMC. Yeah, I'm tapping the CMC a little bit.
Anyways.
All right.
But no, you're right. We do need to, as a long-term goal, flip that. And I'm not talking 68%.
I know.
No, I'm talking flip it.
I
We have
think
70%.
I think we're headed down that
of
road
the people
with-
working
with
here,
2
local
hotels
workforce,
and the big R.
right? We would be a lot better off for it. Because what it boils down to is that the folks that work out of county, right, there's a cost to live in the city. Right, and to pay that cost, you consume in the community that you live in.
Mhm.
Right? You shop at the grocery store, you go to the local restaurant, you know, you go to the hardware store. But the folks that work over the hill aren't doing that. Not at a rate that covers their cost to live here. That's why our roads are the way they are. Right? That's why we have all these issues that we have to deal with, because we have folks that are working that aren't consuming here and covering their cost to live here. So if we can flip that, we'd be a lot better off for it. We'd have people that pay into their community to live here.
Maybe more importantly, what we see with people who work over the hill, we have a lot of latchkey kids. We have a lot of people who then can't participate in their community. And so there are a lot of benefits that are not directly financial to having people actually in this community, working and living here.
And participating in the
Yeah.
community. We have, it's, as a community, we would be so far ahead, and it would genuinely help that feel of a community if we had more people that were living and working here both, because they're going to be able to come after work to a meeting without, I mean, I think of you at all the times you're going back, you know, you were going back and forth, and, you know, you're under the gun to try and get and make a meeting. But it allows people, if they're working in the community, to be more involved and an integral part of decisions and what happens in that community. And it just makes your community richer. It really does, from that human perspective.
So Max, what's your status change?
I'm working for the Pike San Isabel.
Congratulations. That's
You
fantastic.
didn't know that? Oh, yeah, you
Yeah.
weren't here. You were on vacation.
Was I really?
Yeah, the one time you missed.
I took a vacation.
You,
I don't know what you were doing, but you didn't show up.
But you didn't show up.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I just did that for you. It is 8:26, marvelous meeting. We've got to get Tim to